Mindset revolution with the power of the mind. Mindset revolution. Leave the past behind. Mindset revolution.
Oh Lord. Sorry, you got me in the middle of a giggle because I'm not always the sharpest tool in the shed, and it's just go live, and I had to hit it twice because there's another pop up, and I'm like, oh, follow directions. Welcome to Mindset Revolution with Raquel. I am so happy to have with me in this podcast Beth McGill, who is an amazing, amazing person. I was privileged enough to meet her at a networking event online, and she has an exciting book that is coming out soon on January 24th, 2023. So you'll be we're recording this earlier, but you'll be watching this right before it launches. And I will encourage you to reach out to her, to connect with her, go on her website, and then get on her list to find out when it launches. Her book is called Allow Life to Happen and Receive Everything You Desire. I know I am piqued by that particular title. It is really good. Some information about Beth before I turn things over. She says that she is a spiritual mentor, energy healer, practitioner, teacher, and inspirational speaker. Her desire is to help you understand who you really are, your purpose for being here, and to provide you with the clarity, confidence, and courage to live your life as the powerful creator that she knows you to be. And this is right in my wheelhouse as well. I love connecting with other people who are kind of in parallel paths. And sometimes you're like, okay, if you're doing the same thing, why would you bring somebody on your podcast or, do little snippets to kind of help them in their journey? And it's because it's a blue ocean, right? I can't serve everybody. Beth can't serve everybody. There's plenty to go around. And when you understand true abundance, you understand that, oh man, when you find a kindred spirit or somebody who's in a parallel path, it is so much fun to join with them, help them, see how, what you can do together to collaborate. And that's why I've just been meeting a lot of people who do similar work that I do. And it's just been a really fun adventure for me, because then we get to laugh and giggle and go back and forth with our expertise and our adventure stories. And so without further ado, welcome, Beth. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. I love the title of this book. So how did you come up with the title? Tell us a little bit of juiciness of how you came up, or what inspired this amazing book that will be coming out soon?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Thank you so much, Raquel. So, Allow Life to Happen. The first part of the title is quite a simple story. I was laying in bed and one morning, it was October 27th, 2020, and something woke me up. And I'm clairaudient. So I heard 4 words: allow life to happen. And it was loud and it was bold and it woke me up. And I was like, what the heck? Who's in my room? There was no one in my room. It was simply a message. And that message was clear. However, I didn't know what the words meant. I had no idea. And so later that morning in my meditation practice, I received a message that Allow Life to Happen was to be the title of a book I was going to write. Well, in 2020, I had no idea that I was going to write a book. So I simply wrote it down in my journal, made note of it, and didn't think anything more about it until January 15th of this year. And on that day, I received a message that I was to drop everything and write this book. And I did. And I had a little conversation, though, with God's Spirit Universe. I'm like, I don't want to write a book. I don't know how to write a book. What am I supposed to write about? And again, the message was clear that we have your back. You're not alone. The message needs to get out. So that's a little bit about Allow Life to Happen.
Oh my gosh. So people like us who are esoteric, quirky, spiritual badass entrepreneur women.
Yes.
The guest I recorded earlier, her name is Celia. And we talked about that very thing. How when you get the inspiration, that download, how you when you have it, and just really encouraging people that you've been entrusted with that message, and and you've been found, this is part of your purpose. And so encouraging people that when they get these ideas, and we ended up talking about books, that how important it is because the world needs them. And so much of what you just said, for those, some of you were like, "Ooh, I like that interconnected withness." I will make sure to link down the Celia one because it's coming up before this one. But everything you just said really just confirms what Celia and I were talking about, and that's going to be in a December broadcast that was released. So I love it because I was just like, oh my gosh, we love synergy. We love confirmation. That's exactly what the whole podcast was about. And it's wonderful because we just talked about that. And then my next guest, and it was just how it fell on the calendar. I was like, I'm just like kind of blown away. Like, thank you so much. And I got to participate to connect, and I'm going to connect you guys together in this synchronicity. Some people might call it coincidence, but it was for those of you, you know how tech is. For Beth trying to get on my calendar, it was like on, off, on, off, on. But we got it together. We had a little bit of tech gremlins, but it was perfect for today. So I'm like totally geeked out because I just had this conversation with somebody, and here is like a living embodiment of what we're talking about. That sometimes you just have that idea, and then when you receive it, it starts to unfold. So I'm just geeking out right now. I'm so happy that you're here.
Fun.
Yes.
And that's the allowing, right? That's allowing life to happen. You didn't have to force that. You didn't have to make it happen. You simply allowed it to happen. And it's so anti what we're taught. We're taught that we have to work hard. We have to make things happen. We have to go out and grind. No. When you're tuned in to who you really are, and you allow life to happen. So that's the message of the whole book, right? It's about learning who you are and allowing life to happen for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is where and like I was telling Celia in the other podcast, and I tell people all the time, is that you are made on purpose for a purpose, and everybody has a signature sound, and there are things that you were created to do that we also have a time limit. I know for me, and I mentioned this before, when I first got the download to write my first book, I didn't do it because of my own imposter syndrome and all the excuses I was too busy, blah, 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 blah. But then I was in the library because, I'm like, Belle, I need to be around books all the time. I go into the library and I hear, look to your right. And I look to my right and there's my book with my subtitles and my bullet points. And it was just like, it needed to get out. So the assignment was moved. And then I'm not always the sharpest tool in the shed. So it happened a second time. 2 years later, I always get things like 18 months, 2 years in the future. So then 2 years later, this is turn to the right, and I turn to the right, and there's my second book. And so I got the idea for the third book. I'm like, okay, you know what?
Drop everything.
I'm not going to do this again because I've already like missed it twice. And so I wrote my first book, and it's in like under 9 months. And I love that because you heard it, and that's part of receiving it. Sometimes you don't, when you get the idea, the aha moment, however it comes to you, whether it's, you hear it, you get a sense of it, you see a picture of it, and you don't understand it, you still have that choice. Like I can anchor it by receiving it, saying, okay, I don't know what this is, but let me just anchor it, put it on a Post-it, start to think about it. And then you didn't, so it was a time period. You didn't start right away working on it. That was another month. I was like, oh no, that title is part of the book. So if you can give us some more insight on what to expect in this amazing book, because I'm already thrilled. I can't wait to learn more and get my eyes on it myself.
Yeah, sure. So it really is about my spiritual journey, sharing my story, because honestly, I didn't know what I was doing. And one day I simply set my timer for 5 minutes because I was in the financial industry, and it was a very competitive industry. And I had left the teaching world. I was a financial advisor working from home. I had a thriving business, but I knew that there was something more that I was supposed to do. There was more in my life, and I wanted to find joy. Like I had everything going for me, but I knew I wanted joy, and I didn't know where to find it. I'm I'm like, how do people find it? Like, I wanted it springing and bubbling from inside of me. And so one day I was inspired to set my phone timer for 5 minutes, and I did. And I simply was quiet. I was doing everything that my mentor said not to do, right? I was supposed to be busy. I was supposed to be making appointments. I was supposed to be in my schedule and in my work day. And I did just the opposite. And in that first 5 minutes, I asked God, who am I? And in that question, I opened up vulnerability, and I opened up my quest or my spiritual journey, which at the time I didn't know I was doing that, but that's what it turned out to be. And I am a teacher. I'm a lifelong learner. So I devoured books. I followed Bob Proctor, Mary Morrissey. I learned as much as I could from these beautiful souls, these spiritual mentors. And I understood the law of attraction. I understood being able to teach people about abundance and prosperity and to be able to use it in their lives. And so in the book, I share 30 different exercises that I did in my journey that were pivotal, that really made a difference. And I feel that in sharing all of them, that some of them will resonate with people, and other people will be able to shortcut their journey by doing some of the exercises in the book. And so that's what I'm sharing, along with about 16 other book titles that were also influential for me. So that's what I'm sharing.
I have to connect you with Celia. Like a lot of what you just said are the same things we were talking about earlier. So this is a very, very exciting. And this is also, for those of you who've been thinking the same thing, confirmation for you. If you are thinking, okay, maybe, I got this idea, and, there's so many people write books every year. Why would I write this book? It's because of this. Everybody has a little piece of the facet, and we don't know everything. We only know in part. And so when you start to interconnect everything, when you don't do your piece, now that particular thing is missing. And so if you're thinking, I think I'm supposed to write a book. This is your sign. This is your sign. The world needs this, because there are things that the way you explain them, your life story, will resonate with people. Not everybody's going to resonate with my story. My backstory, I got married young. I was totally in love. I married my best friend. We were actually best friends, and we got engaged, and then we dated. He happened to be older than my mother. I was like 19, 20 years old. We got married when I was 22. I had my first kid when I was 26, and love wasn't enough. And, after over 20 years, we separated. But we were still very much involved in each other's lives. We still loved each other. He passed away in 2020, but I have 3 amazing, beautiful, artistic children. I was the lead singer in the band, so we spent a lot of time together. He was an amazing artist, oils on canvas. But in the process of that, I tried to unalive myself 4 different times. And so some of my story people resonate with, being a single mom, having kids, being married to somebody that you love, but recognizing that it wasn't really a good fit. Being super optimistic and positive, being the supporter, not being checked on, having all that pressure, having to launch a business, leaving your job, doing it from inspiration. So maybe some of that resonates with you. Beth, I would love for you to share a little bit about your backstory, so that people can, it helps to connect people when they hear the backstory, because they can see themselves in us. I'm also, people will call me a triple minority. I'm a woman, I'm Latina, and I was a single mom. But I never saw myself as a minority. I just saw myself as I am who I am. And I'm in the flesh I was supposed to be in, and the gender I'm supposed to be in. And, why would I consider myself less than because other people labeled me? I get to choose a label I put on myself. And when I started to change the labels, everything changed. So I would love to hear a little bit about your own backstory.
Yeah, so I grew up in Los Angeles, just a typical childhood. I didn't enjoy living in the city. I felt like it was a concrete jungle, like it was just like a prison for me. And so it was an okay childhood. I came up to the Central Coast of California from Los Angeles to go to college. And it was fine. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to start businesses, but that wasn't going to be the way that I started my career. So what happened is I, like you, fell in love young, right out of college, and soon became a parent of 2 children. And my husband was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and tried to help him as much as I could, because I believe in supporting people, and did everything in my power. And I made a decision early on to stay in the relationship. And because growing up, no one in my family had been through a divorce. So for me, it was a conscious decision that no matter what, I'm going to stay. And what happened for me personally is that my husband left. He went to the US Virgin Islands and never returned. And that was when my kids were very young. And so they don't even remember their father at all. For me, looking back, it was a blessing. I went back to college, I got my teaching credential, and I raised my children. I did what I felt like was my job and my responsibility in my life. And I happily raised them. I love my 2 boys. And during that time as a teacher, I was always doing special events, special things, building gardens. I really wanted to help children to thrive. And in doing so, teachers work really hard. And I realized that I was working really hard and I was helping a lot of other people, but I started to think about my own situation. Like, I'm a single mom. What does this look like? This thing called retirement that had never been talked about in my family. Money was not something that people talked about, and planning was not talked about. Well, I wanted to talk about it because, again, I was working hard. I wanted to make sure that I was okay. And I realized that there wasn't any financial education for me as a teacher. People would come in, sure, and they would want to sell products, but there was no education. Like, this is how you save. And so what I did is doors were opened to me, and I was able to become a financial advisor while I was still teaching full time. So I made that transition, and I knew that I was going to do both full time. I made that commitment to myself because it meant working 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. Again, I was fine for that because I knew it was leading to something more. And after a few years, I was able to leave teaching, set up my thriving financial services business working from home. So I've made some transitions in my career. The point that I mentioned to you earlier, where I set my phone timer for 5 minutes, was a couple of years after I'm working from home. And again, the business is thriving. I have everything going for me, but I knew that there was something more. Now I understand it. It was a calling. It was my soul's calling. At the time, I couldn't have put those words to it, but now happily and joyfully I can. And I was willing to listen to that soul's calling. And that's when I went on my spiritual journey. So that's a little bit about my backstory.
Trying to unmic myself. The interesting thing, that was coming, and it's been coming to me the last couple of days, is this calling over comfort. And a lot of times in these spaces where you have a lot of coaches saying, oh, you can make $10,000 a month or more. Not that you can't, but they really push almost a comfort over your calling. And I love your story because it's showing like you made a decision. And that's really the first step to making radical transformational change in your life, is that you make the main decision and then create and you make micro decisions underneath it to support it. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to, eventually you will have everything you want. Sometimes you can't have everything at the same time, and that's okay. It's also okay. And I love your story because you're like, I happily raised my 2 boys. That was the better thing in the moment during that time period. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people will make the excuse and use your children, their husband, whatever, an excuse. People outside of them, well, I can't because of them. They're not letting me. I'm doing too much for them. Instead of seeing, okay, what's happening in my life right now that is important, that I can be all in, that it's going to give me a lot of joy. And I love how the phrase was, I happily raised my boys. Because even though you had all these other desires and ideas happening and wanting to be an entrepreneur, you're like, this right here is important. And I'm just going to be like the best mom ever. And I'm going to raise these two amazing men. And then, knowing that eventually the time that will come. And then the other part of the story that I really love, that I want people, I'm just like, because it helps when repetition is the key to mastery, and also so I'm paying attention, is that, you had this because of your experience of not having money spoken in your family, and then working really hard, being in this field, which is true. The teachers, and I knew teachers, I still know teachers, they spend a lot of money out of their own pocket.
Oh, yes.
In order for them to, to train and to teach and to empower the children that they've been entrusted, which shouldn't be the case, but right now, unfortunately, it is for many. And so you're recognizing that being in that field, and then it opens up the door because you already had that question. Well, then we never talked about money. Now what? And then having that idea saying, okay, now what? And then you did something about the now what. So this is just an inkling for other people as well. Whatever it is that was missing from, or you feel was missing from your childhood, it could have just been a setup because you're going to be a pioneer for others. You're going to be the person to come in and break ground for others. And then you've been entrusted with that because of your amazing curiosity and your own inner genius. So sometimes people might look at what they didn't have growing up and choose resentment and bitterness, but you chose curiosity and openness and be like, well, what can I do about this now? And then was able to help other people. And then that transitioned you to what you're doing right now, which is absolutely amazing. I know we talked about your book coming out in January. What else would you like to share with this audience, or what else should they know about, working with you one-to-one if you have those opportunities, any workshops, anything else, words of wisdom, empowerment, encouragement that you can give to those who are listening to you right now?
Oh, absolutely. As you were speaking, it reminded me of a quote by Marie Curie, and I don't have the quote memorized, but it's something to the fact that we don't need to live in fear. We simply need to learn. So if there's any, like what you were talking about, if there's something that from your childhood or something that you don't know, don't let that lead you to a place of fear. But in this day when we can Google anything, there's no reason why we can't. We can learn anything that we want to. So first of all, I want to encourage people with that. And the way that I work with people individually is through my energy healing sessions. And I do those over the phone, so remotely. So I offer those on my website, Thrive, Flourish, and Grow. And then once the book comes out, I've written a journal, and I have a beautiful graphic designer. She's done an amazing work with me. So we have a journal coming out. And then in March of next year, once the book and the journal come out, I've created a course called Life Expansion and Transformation, where it's a 6-week course where I take people through a deep dive of the book, where we can really go deep into the exercises. And I do energy work on a daily level for the participants. So I'm just finishing up the course this evening with this group. And so I've been doing, after 6 weeks, 30 days of energy work for these women and myself as well. And it's been really fun and really amazing. So that's what I'm offering.
That's awesome. Now you mentioned, you gave us a little teaser there that you had 30 exercises for people in your book. Is there any exercise that you can offer people or talk about or take us through in this podcast to kind of, be the little carrot? This is why you want to get the book and this is why you want to work with me.
Yes. Well, the ones that just came to my mind is scripting. We've all heard about scripting your ideal life, right? And it's just something that takes time. You don't have to write a book. It's simply writing out in present tense the way you want your life to look. I'm so happy and grateful that I'm living the life of my dreams. And write out in present tense what that life looks like. It's strong, it's powerful. It can be 1 page, it can be 5 pages. It's totally up to you. The really powerful thing about that is that you can easily record yourself reading that story. And the reason why it's so powerful is we get so used to or trained to be talking about the story about the past, a divorce, a death, someone did this to me. But no, we need to tell another story. We need to tell the story of the life we desire. So writing it out and then recording yourself on your phone or a program like Audacity and listen to it. Listen to yourself in this elevated state, talking about this life of your dreams. And then to make it even more powerful, I offer a mirroring technique. And again, a lot of us have heard and read about different mirroring techniques. Well, I read a lot of them and I took parts of them that it resonated with me. And I've created one that I lead people through, but it simply is looking at the mirror, looking at a mirror and leading yourself, seeing yourself living that life, feeling what it feels like. And it can be just 5 minutes a day. But when you combine those two, when you're looking at yourself in the mirror and you're listening to yourself read the story of your life, it is powerful. It's amazing. So that's something simple and easy that someone could even do today.
I'm so happy that you said that. Now, for those of you who are new to this or think, that doesn't really work. I was just seeing a TikTok, I think it was yesterday or the other day. And this young lady said she's worked with multimillionaires and billionaires. And they all had like 4 traits that were exactly the same across the board. One of them was having a practice in the morning where they did, prayers, meditations, affirmations. But the other one was what Beth just mentioned. They spoke about what they wanted to have always in present tense. And she said it was really jarring at first, and it took some getting used to, because they would talk as though it already happened. They would talk like they already did it. So if they were working on a project, manifesting something in, wanting to build whatever it is, every single one of them did what Beth just said. Now, so if you were talking to them, they would talk to you as though it's happening right now. So their language is different. And this is a really great way for, sometimes we're not going to do that with people we know, mostly because they just think that you're crazy. They don't understand the concept. But if you want to be a powerful person, if you're dreaming of being a multi-millionaire or billionaire, you thought like, man, that'll be very cool. It's a simple thing. And the reason why people don't do it is because it's simple. And you need consistency, and you need accountability, and you need support. Those are the 3 main ingredients for anything. So if you can be consistent, and that's a really great suggestion, Beth, like write it down, record it, and then you hear it to yourself. That's a beautiful way to be consistent with your own dreaming. And we change over time. We want different things over time. You can always tweak your story. But we're telling ourselves a story all the time anyway. So if you're going to tell yourself a story, you might as well tell the story that you want to live in.
Absolutely. And the one thing I didn't mention is that, 2 things. One, you need to imagine your life as it is 3 years from now, because that's based in psychology. If you dream it out 1 year from now, your mind will take over and say, no, you can't do that in 1 year. But if you say 3 years from now, your mind is going to say, oh, maybe she can, right? So it's playing a little mind trick. So you want to plan it out 3 years from now. And then also, it's not just for individual millionaires and billionaires, right? That's what the big companies do. Google, Apple, and they're not just doing 3 years out, they're doing 30 years out.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, like, I know there's some Asian cultures that they really think generationally. They think 100 years out. What is the 100-year plan? Me, I can't, I don't even know what I'm doing in a couple weeks. My brain works, I could do like pockets. So the next 90 days, I'm like, what do I want to do in the next 90 days? And that's part of my personality gift cluster. But for those of you, especially you new, that's a great thing. Because I love the number 3 too, because then you're like, okay, 3 years, it doesn't seem so daunting. It gives you time to start creating those nice little brain connections that says, oh, this is the reality I want to live in. Oh, this is what's really happening. Oh, Well, your brain doesn't understand the difference between, what you're thinking and what you're imagining. It thinks whatever you're imagining is happening. It doesn't know any better. So you might as well start a new program and tell yourself
Yep.
a different story.
The
We tell
subconscious.
ourselves stories all the time. You can tell yourself a story right now and about an argument you had with somebody, and it'll piss you off all over again.
Yeah.
Or you can tell yourself a story or something that happened that really, gave you a lot of joy. You had a really great time. And then you get all these juicy chemicals, because I would say your brain is your drug dealer or your medicine man. And then you get all these juicy chemicals because you start remembering and how wonderful it was. You just told yourself a story.
It's
And
our
if things,
choice.
yeah, yeah, it's just like, tell yourself a new story. And if you're going to be living out those internal narratives, you might as well decide what the internal narrative is going to be. And you have time. But start now. Start
Yeah.
by making sure that you're on Beth's list. Get the book, get some help. This is the beauty of books, is that you might not think, well, I don't need a coach, I don't want a coach. The beauty of a coach is that we help you, so that we help you with the little pitfalls. We see them ahead of time, and we can tell you, hey, don't step there, there's a landmine. Oh, you need some practice, do these things, because we've already been through it. And so this is the beauty of Beth's book, that if you're like, well, I don't know even if I want a coach, books are, and the way, especially the way she created it, is wonderful, because it's like having a coach in your hands automatically. And now you can refer to it over and over again. You can take the one exercise and just do the exercise every day for a week, every day for a month. This is something with 30 exercises. You can do one a day and do them over and over and over again until you start to really master them. There's so many different ways that you can take some of her exercises to really start to change your life. But it's not going to change until you decide. So I hope that you decide, that you have decided to connect with Beth McGill, an amazing person. Everything that you need to know to connect with her is going to be in description, wherever you are finding this podcast or snippets. Is there anything else you would like to say before we close out, Beth?
Oh no, that was beautiful. Thank you so much. Oh, just so much goes in my mind when you started talking about the book and how it can help. And just journaling. I encourage people to journal and write, even if you do the scripting, to journal every day and do it in a place of openness and expectation. I believe that when we expect good things to happen, then they'll happen. So it can be as simple as writing down, I look forward to this great day. I know that beautiful things are going to happen for me. Even if you only have time to write down 2 sentences at the beginning of your day, have it be something that is hopeful and expecting good things, and it will start to change your mindset. So I would encourage people to do that as well.
That's awesome. Thank you again, Beth, for being here. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to see what happens in the lives of many people around the world who will be getting your book and connecting with you. And until next time, which will be very, very soon, thank you for hanging out with us on Mindset Revolution with Raquel. Until next time.
All right. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure.
Mindset revolution. It's time to break the mold. Mindset revolution. Be unstoppable, bold. Mindset revolution. With the power of the mind. Mindset revolution. Leave the past behind. Mindset revolution.